Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nugentino Cinema. And today I'm here with Kylie. How are you?
I'm good, Drew. How are you?
I've been doing pretty good. We're here to review The Whale, directed by Darren Aronofsky and starring Brendan Fraser. And this has been a big award season movie. I've been very excited to see it for a long time, and I finally got to see it a week or so ago. But right off the bat, were you excited? Had you heard about this movie before?
I had heard of it and I was thinking of it as just anticipating this new Brendan Fraser movie coming out. I didn't read too much about the plot and I didn't know anything about the play that it's based off of.
hmm
So I went in cold, but I was really excited to see it.
Yeah, I probably had read up a little bit too much on it because I'm a Darren Aronofsky fan, so I was looking into it, and I'd read the plot synopsis, and it just sounded really interesting to me. But I'd read about the play. I had gotten some things spoiled for me a little bit, but I was still surprised by a couple places the movie went, so it wasn't too bad. But I was prepared for it to be all in one location. I know a lot of people were surprised that it was all in an apartment, and but yeah, I was ready for all that stuff. But what were your initial thoughts on the movie?
Um, so I guess going in and thinking about, his previous movies, like Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, and the others, I was a little bit hesitant about whether or not it was going to be going in a body horror direction, and I'm glad that it didn't, or at least I didn't feel that way. Um,
hmm
because he does have those elements in some of his other movies. But I thought that, well, it was really sad. But I think that a lot of the things in the themes of the movie were hopeful. Um, and I don't know if I can say. I guess I'll say that I enjoyed it, but it's a different kind of enjoyment than I would normally get from, a movie that has a happy ending and just some turmoil along the way, but then everything turns out great at the end.
Right.
But those kinds of movies aren't really interesting or as interesting to me. So I did enjoy it, but it's definitely a different kind of watch.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's not. It's obviously a very sad movie, but I did enjoy it in the sense that I was engaged the entire time. I never felt bored. So yeah, and I've heard some people criticize. Well, one, people criticize the they think that, or they feel that it's body horror, or that they feel like there's some sort of fat shaming going on, um and Brendan Fraser being in a fat suit and things like that. There's been a lot of criticism towards that, but I think that Brendan Fraser, I mean, he's gained a lot of weight over the past few years, or since we've seen him last. But even if he's obviously not a 600-pound man, but I don't know. I just feel like I don't know that they could have gotten an actor that was actually near that weight. I feel like he might be the closest that we could actually get. And it's not like I've seen the play and some clips of the play, and a lot of times it's like a skinny guy in a fat suit, and it looks even more ridiculous. So I thought he blended in. It didn't seem like when I was watching the character on screen, it felt like I bought it. It didn't feel completely ridiculous or fake. Um, but yeah, so I didn't really have any problems with that. There's also been criticism just towards a lot of people feeling that it's just kind of cheesy because of the writing, and which I think is very just relevant. Or I think that was just how the play was, and a lot of plays have that sort of style. And I don't know, I was more looking at it as kind of like a stylistic thing, so it didn't really bother me. But yeah, how did you
So
feel about that?
I guess I have a question first and then some thoughts, but do you know, was the script verbatim the play?
Yeah, I'm pretty well. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but I think it's pretty close. Because I watched some clips of the play, and it's pretty much seemed the same. And it was written the screenplay for the movie was written by the playwriter, so
Okay.
I think it's pretty much just the play, with some little things added here and there. I haven't seen the play, or in its full form. But kind of at the end, like the very last shot, I got the feeling that wasn't what happened in the play. I mean, I haven't seen it, but I just like, well, first off the bat, I'll just say I think we can just give spoilers, so I could just talk
Okay.
about it. Um, but yeah, so there's a scene towards the end where he starts walking to his daughter, and it's like it's the big climactic moment. It was like set up towards the beginning. She asks him to walk to him, and at the end, it's a very emotional moment, and he does. But you sort of see like what I interpreted is he has a heart attack, and because he was already dying, he's like he only had like so much time left. But you see it like goes to white, and he like levitates, and it just goes to white, and the credits roll, and it's like implied he like went to heaven, or it's like a very surreal sort of thing that happens. But which I've heard people criticize that or say that they thought it was ridiculous or just silly, but I thought it would like worked really well for me, and I don't think that. I mean, I don't know for sure because I haven't seen the play, but I feel like that's not what happened. Like I could see it being the same thing. Like he's walking to his daughter, but maybe it just cuts to black instead of the sort of heaven thing. The heaven thing seemed to me like a Darren Aronofsky thing because his films, like Mother, Noah, The Fountain, he's always like really interested in religious stuff, and there is a big religious allegory happening throughout the whole movie, and that is like in the source material. But I don't know, just the very like last moment felt like something he added in, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with, you said something about it being one location and people were really surprised that it was single location. And I personally love single location films. I don't know. I think that a lot of times it really gives the actors and characters like a lot of space to just really like show their stuff, because
Yeah.
there's not, a whole lot of set changes and things like that. So I really enjoyed that it was single location, aside from, I think he had like a flashback of him at the beach, but that doesn't really count.
Yeah.
And then as far as like people being upset about seeing Brendan Fraser in a fat suit, I definitely agree with you. I thought that the makeup and whatever effects they did were great. I never was like, oh, that's someone in like a bodysuit or any kind of like makeup. And that can really take you out of a moment when something like that is really obviously, you know, makeup or just like added in. So I thought that that was really successful, and I wouldn't be surprised if the film wins some awards for that too.
Yeah, that would be a good. I mean, there's like buzz for Brendan Fraser like winning Best Actor. I don't know for sure that'll happen, but makeup would be a good nomination for it as well, for sure.
Hmm.
I'd like to see it. It's definitely one of my favorite movies of the year. But another thing that people think, or that like I think is somewhat controversial, is like people, or I've heard Brendan Fraser talk about this and Darren Aronofsky with the fat suit thing, like a movie like Nutty Professor or like or Norbit or things that use fat suits. There's always this idea that it's them making fun of fat people or it's like some sort of shaming and that's not what they wanted to do with the movie. And some people feel like it is, and I feel like there's a theme in the movie of like Brendan Fraser, and there's a specific moment where he's like talking to the Mormon kid, or he was like New Life or some different form of
Right.
Mormonism.
Like
But
basically.
yeah, but he's talking to that kid, and he's like, "You think I'm disgusting, don't you?" Or he's trying to push him in that direction. And he calls him disgusting, and I feel like some people think it is like body shaming because people are calling him disgusting multiple times in the movie, but I don't think I don't think that's the movie's perspective. The only thing that I will say that I thought was kind of odd is that, well, for one, I did some like reading up on the playwright, and he's like he was gay and was grew up in Idaho, and so a lot of the movie was sort of inspired by his upbringing and sort of having a religious upbringing and feeling like an outcast because he was gay. And so I think from what I got from it, like the fat thing and sort of the shaming and the depression is sort of like how he felt at the time being an outcast, and he feels like he was treated like he was disgusting, and he's using the fat thing as an allegory for that. And I can see that kind of rubbing people the wrong way, but I don't know. I just think that there's still like a humanity, especially at the ending and where it goes. Like I don't ever find it really offensive or anything like that.
I agree. And I also think that it did a good job at like the way that I took it was kind of that, like, there are people in the world like this and you don't necessarily always see them, but there are people who care about them and they care about people, and just kind of like showing that side of it versus like, I didn't feel like the movie's lens was fat shaming him. I think there were characters in the film that were fat shaming him, but I think that that's the reality of like living life as a fat person, you know? And so to not show that would be maybe unrealistic. But yeah, I don't know about like the playwright using it as an allegory for his own life.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know 100%. I mean, I got like kind of sort of what I read that seemed like what he was going for, but I can't say for totally sure that the way I interpreted it is exactly what's happening. But I don't know. It's just sort of what I got from it. There's definitely like religious themes. You can like say like Charlie, or Brendan Fraser's character, is sort of like a Christ like figure in a way. I mean, especially like with him dying at the end, and he's sort of, and to use for lack of a better word, because it's a weird word, but he's sort of like a martyr type figure because he's very positive, and everybody else around him is very negative, or not everybody, but a lot of people, and he sort of just takes whatever comes at him no matter what, and even if his daughter is, saying terrible things to him, he's always trying to look at the bright side. He's always trying to look at the positive spin of what she's doing. And in that way, he's sort of a sacrificial character. He sacrifices his own emotions for his like positivity. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to see the play again, or not the film again, to sort of fully absorb things. But yeah, that's just what I thought.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I was thinking about what you said about the missionary. I think his name was Thomas. And that scene where Brendan Fraser is like, you think I'm disgusting, like, say I'm disgusting, and that whole thing. I think that Charlie has a lot of empathy for everyone around him and does have like a positive outlook the whole movie, but he also really cares about people being honest. And I think that he sees pretty immediately when Thomas shows up, like sees through his whole story of like, oh, I lost my phone and I'm a part of, I guess he was a part of New Life, but then we find out later that he's like run away because he stole like money from the church, like donations.
Yeah.
And I kind of think that Brendan Fraser can pick up on that very quickly. Maybe not the whole story, but picks up on that very quickly. And so when they're in that moment, he wants him to be honest, but also in turn is trying to make him be honest with himself about what his intentions for coming to convert Charlie are, because it's not anything to do with Charlie. It's all about him kind of repenting for this thing that he's done. He like was smoking weed and stole a bunch of money and ran away. So like, what can I do to make myself feel better? And I thought that scene was really powerful. I was already crying before we even got there, but
Yeah.
I thought that was
I like that scene a lot too. It's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, or I think one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. But I think Brendan Fraser's performance is obviously really fantastic, and I think a lot of people get distracted by the whole idea that, like, through the PR for the movie and the advertising, that it's just like they get annoyed by the Brendan Fraser comeback thing. That's something that's been talked about a lot. And
why are they so mad about Brendan Fraser coming back?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah, same here. But I just think he gives so much emotion. Like it's like just beyond anything else. Like, it's an amazing performance. Like, his emotional moments towards the end are just so raw and so powerful. And I can just see that he's giving his whole, like, soul to this. Like, and it's just, I don't know. I thought it was an amazing performance. But I can't see anybody else really doing it. I can't think of anybody else who would be good in that role. So.
Right. And what a great role for him to come back on. And honestly, this I was excited already, but I'm very interested to see what he does next from here, because I think that I agree. I can't see anybody else playing Charlie, but I also think he's, like, in a new era of what kind of characters he's going to play. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of them are going to be a lot more serious like this.
Yeah, for sure. I know he's in Martin Scorsese's next movie, so I'm excited for that. I loved him in No Sudden Move. That was a Steven Soderbergh movie that came out last year. I thought it was really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good. I would definitely recommend it. But he has, like, a supporting role. I know he has a couple other things lined up too, but yeah, I'm excited to see, like, anything he does. He actually kind of reminds me of Philip Seymour Hoffman a bit, which I never would have thought that I would ever compare the two, but he does remind me of Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah. No, I was kind of thinking about that while watching this movie, and they're not the same at all, but this really reminded me of Love, Liza in a lot of ways, just like the character and the emotions.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
But
I mean, it's just sort of like a spiral into depression.
Yes.
Both of those movies do that, so yeah, I can see that.
So what did you think about his daughter Ellie and, like, those scenes with her?
I thought sometimes it came off very over the top, but, like, it definitely, I think it works in Brendan Fraser's whole thing of, you know, liking honesty and, like, seeing the positive side of what she does. And what he says at the end, I mean, I haven't seen the movie in about a week and a half, so it's, like, a little bit blurry to me, but he was, like, with the New Life character, or like, she, like, outs him and, like, everything he did, but like, Brendan Fraser kind of spins it, or, like, interprets it like she wasn't doing that, like, she wanted to help you. I forget exactly what he said, but, like, he finds a very positive way to look at that, and I think that's a really interesting way to look at his character. And obviously the whole, like, honesty thing, like, when she, like, the mom comes in and she's saying, like, do you know, like, the things, like, she says about you on Facebook, like, they're horrible. And then she, like, shows him the picture on Facebook where it says, like, there'll be a grease fire in hell when this guy dies or something. It's a picture of him, and it's, like, this, like, ridiculously horrible thing. But he's just like, that's the truth, it's honest. And, like, I don't know, I found it kind of, like, endearing, like, how, like, nothing really phases him. But then it's like it's sort of a weird double-edged sword, because he seems to be very positive, and he seems to be unfazed by things, or he can look at things in a great way, but he's also, you know, so stricken by grief that he's sort of like self-destructing, and he's basically, you know, committing suicide in a way.
Right.
And so it's, I don't know, it's interesting to see the two ways that the character acts. But I like the daughter character, even though it was over the top. Like, I thought it worked with the style of the movie and the writing, and it really is just like, you know, it's Brendan Fraser's heart on screen in a way. I don't know, but yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't have any problems with the way it was written.
Right. No, I agree it was over the top, and every time there was a moment like that where um something like that happened where it just seemed like a little more not far-fetched, but maybe it was like more exaggerated. I just kept coming back to the idea of like this was adapted from a play, and when you're acting on stage, you're playing to the person who's in the last seat on the last row. And I kind of like that they didn't take that energy out of the movie.
Right.
Because I think that's
I like
what
it
makes
too.
it different. And I enjoyed her character. And I see, like, I think what she did by posting him on Facebook, like photos of him and everything, was obviously really ugly. But I also think that that was a catalyst for him being honest with his class when he gets on the Zoom call and is like, I've been asking y'all to be honest with me all semester, and now I'm going to be honest with you. And kind of like shows himself. And because I think that was one of the things he was afraid of, was he didn't want people to see him like that because he felt, you know, the shame. And so being able to have her kind of do it for him already, not that his class saw her Facebook or anything, but now it's out there. And I think that happens before the pizza, or wait, that happens, yeah, before the pizza delivery guy sees him too. She posts the photo, then the pizza delivery guy sees him, and then he shows his class.
Right.
But the only thing that I thought was so far-fetched in the whole, like, my one gripe was that I think like the class's reaction to him, and there's like multiple people like getting out their phones. And I don't know, I might be in my own like little world of positivity, but I think that people tend to have more empathy than that.
Yeah. I think that is a scene I specifically heard as like pointed out as like cheesy and kind of ridiculous. And I get why it is, but for some reason it just, I don't know. It is, I can let it go. But the one that bothered me more is the pizza guy when he's like he's like just like so shocked and disgusted. Like I don't know how people react differently all the time, but like just like I've delivered food a lot for a long time, and if I saw somebody like that, I don't think I would be like, "Oh my god!" But like, I mean, that's just how I would react. Like, I don't think I would act shocked or anything. But I just found it like a little bit over the top that happened. But I understand that it's like it's just sort of trying to show like Charlie's worst fears like kind of happening, and so I don't know. But I did think that was a little over the top, that specific moment.
Yeah, I get that. And I guess I didn't take it as him being disgusted. Yes, he was shocked. But I think that, and it might have been too quick of a moment for this, but something I've been kind of mulling over was the pizza guy kind of realizing like, oh, I've been contributing to this in some way.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
because I mean, you don't really think about who is on the other end of that transaction. You're just like, it's a job. And so, you know, he could have thought he's delivering these 2 pizzas to a family or just one person, or like not thought about it at all. And so him kind of interacting with Charlie, I think, was him maybe like quickly understanding like who Charlie is.
Yeah. I guess I just thought of it as like there must be, because if somebody was like asking me to leave something at the door and it seemed very like odd, like I would think there was something wrong already. but yeah, I think that's a better interpretation of it, to like look at it as like him kind of being like I might have contributed to this or something like that. But yeah, that makes more sense.
Well, and I think every supporting character, maybe aside from Thomas, because he is like a new person coming into the mix, contributed to it in some way, because there's I've seen a lot of not criticism but questioning, well, if Liz is doing the grocery shopping, then why didn't she just buy him healthier things? And I get that, but I think that there's an element of being a caretaker where you have to decide whether you're going to make all of the decisions for someone, or if you're going to let them maintain their autonomy. And I think that she was choosing to like let Charlie continue to make his own decisions about what he wanted to do, whether that was good for him or bad for him. He's making the call, she's not making the decision. So she never made him go to the hospital. She never like nitpicked out what he ate, at least as far as we saw in these like in this week of his life.
Right.
So I liked that element to it as well, because I think that that's a hard decision to make, but also realizing that you can't make decisions for other people and the way that they choose to take care of themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think I do see it that way, but also I do think there's an element of her feeding into him a bit. Like, she'll have like a submarine sandwich on the counter, and she'll be like, "Here's your sub," and like it feels like she's kind of like giving into what he wants a lot. But I think there is like her brother was his boyfriend, and then her brother kind of did the opposite thing. He was starving himself for a long time and was extremely skinny, and then eventually committed suicide. But I think there's an emotional element of that. Her brother was starving, so she feels better giving Charlie what he wants and giving him food, because it's like she wanted to give that to her brother. She wanted to help her brother in that way. So even though she shouldn't necessarily be helping Charlie and giving him all this food, she sort of is, like, because of an emotional reason. Or at least that's how I thought of it when I first saw it. But I do think there's an element of like wanting to let him do what he wants, and that's why she doesn't want to like force him to go to the hospital or things like that. But I did think she was like sort of like literally feeding into him with food at certain points because of an emotional thing.
Right, because she's having the thought of, I've lost someone to them essentially starving themselves to death, and at least Charlie's eating. Like,
Yeah.
At least he's doing a basic thing that you need to do to stay alive, but then it goes too far the opposite direction.
Yeah. Yeah, but I thought that was another thing that was sort of, it was interesting how the boyfriend and Charlie sort of like had these depression spirals that like literally happened like the opposite directions. Like, one was becoming morbidly obese and one was like losing tons of weight. So I thought that could have like been a little cheesy, like in the way it's written, but still it didn't bother me too much. It's like a lot of that stuff, like I said before, I just chalk up to like the the sort of style of it, the style of the play, and just wanting to capture the play exactly, and that being what makes it different from a lot of other films. I've actually had the idea of like when I've gone to see plays, I thought it would be interesting to have the play performed on stage, but try to capture it like through different camera angles. So you go down on the stage and just film it from various angles to make it cinematic, but you're still having the play just performed out as a normal play. But that's kind of what this does. So I thought that was cool. It's done on a normal set. It's done on like a movie set, but it's still basically is just the play. And so I thought that was interesting. And there's other movies that have done it. Like Robert Altman did a movie called Secret Honor with Philip Baker Hall. That's about Richard Nixon. That is like sort of a play, a one-man play that just, plays out. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting thing. So I was down with all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead.
One thing that I guess really shocked me as far as characters go, was Charlie's ex-wife saying like, oh, well, I never brought her around when she was older because I thought that you would judge me for how I parented her and how she turned out. And I thought that was one of the saddest parts of the movie. And I think there's a lot of it revolves around shame, but like this shame that she thought she wasn't a good parent. And so that in a way affected Ellie's ability to have a relationship with Charlie, which I'm sure affected Charlie in some way, even though most of this is stemming from his partner Alan passing away. I think all of those things are intertwined as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think like shame is like a central point of the film. I like the scene. I thought another like kind of like heartbreaking moment was when the mom was like leaving and she was like, I raised her and you gave her the money and that's what you did, and so you did enough, like it's okay. But I thought that was kind of sad how it's like just chalked up to like, just having money to give is enough. But yeah, but it's a very emotional film. It's definitely not something one should probably watch if they're in a bad place.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But I loved it. I mean, I'd probably give it a 4.5. I didn't think it was perfect, but I thought it still sort of lived up to my expectations of what it was going to be.
Yeah, I went back and forth between 4.5 and 5. But what I was talking about earlier with just the idea of having a film where these kinds of characters are represented and it's not something that you typically see like on the internet where things are curated and everything's beautiful and that kind of a thing, because I think a lot of the time people will try to make their lives look like great all the time, but also that it kind of shed some light on people who, for whatever reason, can't go out into the world and the relationships that they have in having to stay at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I've heard some people like sort of interpret it as like a COVID sort of inspired film. I don't know if that's totally true because I think the play was written in 2012, or at least that's the earliest performance of it. But it is interesting how you can look at it in a different way now, because Charlie is sort of like locking himself down and he's performing all of his tasks from home and having things delivered to him, and also it's kind of odd that they inserted like some stuff of Donald Trump like on the TV. I wasn't fully sure of what point they were trying to make there, because that would have been after the play was originally written, that all the Trump stuff happened. But so they added that in, but I'm not quite sure what that was getting at. But yeah.
So I did a little bit of research about the clips, and I'm gonna have to look this up really quick so that I can make sure I'm getting my dates right. But so the clips were from early, I want to say they were from early 2015. And that is the same year that same-sex marriage was legalized in all states. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Well, that would make sense thematically. Just being legalized and there being some sort of pushback against it.
Right. Okay. So that would have been June 26th, 2015. The Supreme Court struck down all state bans on same-sex marriage and legalized it in all 50 states. So
okay.
I was kind of wondering if that, while I was watching it, I was wondering, why is this included? Because we never get into, like, nothing's ever said about Trump. Nothing's ever said about what's going on in politics at that time. So that's the only thing that I could see is kind of Charlie being at this point where he has, like, divorced his wife, and now he was with his partner Alan, and there's this kind of like hope on the horizon, but they didn't quite make it there. Mm-hmm. And a lot of Alan's shame was coming from his former life or involvement in the church. And so I was thinking about it as, if this had happened a little bit later, would Charlie and Alan have been okay? Because now there's this other entity that's not a religious entity telling them, like, it's okay to be gay.
Right. Yeah, I can see it definitely being like, there being this glimmer of hope, but also I think there might be like another dark side to it of like there still being like someone like Trump who's like looming on the horizon, and there's still this like element of shame or like element of like pushback, and things always going in sort of like a dark side, like always. I don't know, but there is, I don't know, I think there's two sides of the coin, but but like definitely with it being related to same-sex marriage, that does clear things up a lot, and there seems to be more of a reason to why that was there. So, yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. So, yeah.
And I don't think any of the clips have anything to do with it, but the clips give you the timeline for that happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wasn't totally aware of what year it was supposed to be taking place. I guess it would either have to be 2015 or 2016, but yeah, because, I mean, Facebook was involved or smartphones, so I knew it had to be somewhat recently, but I also thought, like, it's still, like, over 5 to 6 years ago, or 7, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, it's definitely happening at a very specific time. But, yeah, I'm sure there's a reason for that.
And something else that I was kind of left with questions after the movie was, so at one point they show that Charlie's apartment is on the second floor of the apartment complex. And so I was kind of wondering, are there reasons that he doesn't want to go to the hospital outside of he knows that it would be very difficult for him to get to the first floor of the apartment if he needed to go to the hospital?
Yeah. Maybe he doesn't want, because, I mean, I'm sure people could get him out of there somehow, but, like, it would, like, cause a scene and be, like, a whole big, ordeal. So that should definitely be part of it.
Right, and that's what he doesn't want. He wants honesty, but he doesn't want to be a spectacle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was a deliberate choice to have him up there. And also, I thought it was interesting the location. Like, he's very isolated, obviously, within this apartment, but also like just the location of Idaho is very sort of isolated. In kind of a rural area, and it's just very sort of lonely. Um, Although I thought it was interesting that while he is very lonely, there still is many people coming in and out of his house at all times. but but I think that's just another part of it being a play. Like, you always have people sort of entering and exiting so they can interact with the characters. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Another person I forgot to mention, and we've talked about her a little bit, was Hong Chow, who played Liz. I thought she was really good in it. I thought all the performances were good, outside of maybe the person I thought was the weakest was the missionary kid, but I didn't think he was bad, though. I thought he was fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought he was fine as well, and I really like Hong Chow, everything that I've seen her in recently, and it seems like she's been in quite a bit. I've enjoyed, so I was glad to see her in this kind of in a different role, because I just saw the menu a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that too, and she was also in Watchmen, the HBO show.
I haven't watched
the first thing I saw her in was Inherent Vice. I think that was her first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually saw Inherent Vice in Dallas on 35 millimeter when it first came out, and she introduced it, so she was actually there at the screening I was at.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was pretty cool. Yeah, but like at that point, that was the only thing she had done. But it's cool to see her go on. She's done like a lot more things. She's pretty much been great in most of the roles I've seen her in. So yeah, it's definitely cool.
And there's a lot of diversity, I think, in the types of characters that she's playing as well. So excited to see what she goes on to do from here. And I was really happy to see, what's her name? Is it Sydney Sink?
Oh, Sadie Sink.
Sadie Sink. I was happy to see her in something. I guess we're not really post Stranger Things yet, but
yeah,
just to see her outside of that universe.
Yeah, I've heard people talk a lot about her. I've never watched Stranger Things, so to me she was just another actress that could be anybody. But I have heard people talk a lot about her. I thought she was good in it. I mean, she has a sort of intense role that I could see going bad with certain actors. But like, I never found her because I feel like with certain other actors, I could see somebody like just coming off completely cringy and like unbearable. But I thought she performed it well. So yeah, I thought she was good.
Right. I felt like it was just watching a 17-year-old that's kind of having some bratty moments, but also going through some really serious things that you're not prepared for when you're 17.
Yeah, I thought she was good. And one interesting thing I thought was the flashbacks on the beach where it shows her young. Apparently, that young version of her was her sister. So I thought that was cool.
Oh, that is
used
cool.
Her sister for the younger role. Yeah. But yeah, I thought everybody was really good in it. I thought the direction was good, even though it's obviously more reserved because it's sort of this version of a play. But I still thought Darren Aronofsky inserts little things here and there, and it felt like one of his films. Yeah, I really liked it. But what was your rating again? Did you say you would give it a 4.5 or a 5?
I ended up giving it a 5. But so typically when I watch something, I know as soon as the credits roll, okay, this is what I'm going to rate it. And Michael and I went and saw it, and we talked about it on the way home, and then probably ended up talking about it for about an hour afterwards. And it took me kind of getting my thoughts about it out to realize that I think it was a 5 for me.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I don't know if I'll see it in the theater, but in the theater again. But I will probably see it once it comes to home video or digital or whatever. But yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think I was going to try to see it again actually before we talked, but I just didn't have the time, and all of the showings were while I was at work for the most part, or at 11 o'clock at night. So
Yeah. Apparently, I think it's doing pretty well. Like not like amazingly. It's a smaller movie, obviously, but when I went to see the movie, there was a lot of people in the theater, and there was like reactions. People were laughing, or people were seemed to be reacting in all the right spots. But I just thought it was interesting to see a movie like that with like a fairly full audience, because usually, I mean, movies I go to aren't really full ever, unless it's like some big giant like a blockbuster.
right.
Yeah. But I don't know how well. I looked up. It's made like $2 million, which isn't like amazing, but I think for the size of the movie, it's decent. I don't know how much it costs, but it couldn't have cost much, seeing it's just like all in one location. But yeah, I'll be curious to see if it's a success. But yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, I'll definitely go see it again before it comes out of the theater. We saw it on Friday night before Christmas. And so I think a lot of people, at least here in Austin, had already begun going out of town. So the theater, because we saw it at like prime time, I feel like, to see a movie. I think it was 7 o'clock. Um, and so it was probably about half full. But there were definitely some people sobbing in there.
Yeah.
And I was one of them. I was trying to just be quiet, but
Yeah.
thought it was
Definitely.
probably the first movie to make me cry like that since Blue Valentine, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely another very emotional one. But yeah, I got emotional too, specifically in the last scene. Another scene that got me emotional, I forget the exact words they were saying or what exact, but was when Samantha Morton, the wife, like she was sort of like laying on him, and they were just talking about memories from the past, and she was getting very emotional, and I thought that was a really good scene. But yeah, it's a very emotional movie, and I was expecting to get emotional, and I did, so it was successful.
Yeah, it's always like kind of a letdown when you go in thinking that you are, and then nothing hits like correctly. Oh, something else I wanted to talk about was I've seen a lot of comments online about the use of Moby Dick and like that storyline being a little bit too heavy-handed. And I don't know if it's because people don't like Moby Dick as a story or what, but I think that those themes are there, and they also talk about it directly because Sadie Sink's essay that she wrote when she was in like 8th grade about Moby Dick was a huge part of the movie. And I also thought that it was, I think, one of my favorite things that kept being brought up throughout the movie was that Charlie always had to read her essay to kind of calm down and get his heart rate down. I don't know why, I just loved that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's his way of being connected to her.
Yeah, and I also think it's like another form of like pure honesty to him, is her honesty about the story. But yeah, I guess I could see people thinking it's sort of cheesy, just in like creating a double entendre or a double meaning for the name the whale. But it also, because I think people obviously think it's like just a reference to him being fat, but it also, the whale is the original title of Moby Dick. There's forms of Moby Dick where it's called the whale. And And then they talked about Ishmael, like being in a sort of depression when he's going after Moby Dick, and there's definitely sort of comparisons there. It's not something that really bothered me. That was like the least of anything that bothered me in the movie, but I thought for the most part I was fine with it.
Yeah, it didn't bother me at all either. And I don't know why, but something that I've noticed about kind of nautical books like that, there's something about it that people just don't like.
Yeah.
Because I remember a while back I was talking to somebody. I really like the book The Old Man and the Sea, and it's very slow and kind of just like mundane things happening. It's this old man trying to catch this fish, and there's something about it that I love, but I guess it's maybe too boring of a storyline because it's basically just this guy fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And Moby Dick, I don't want to like boil it down to it's just this guy fishing, but essentially that's what it is at the end of the day. So
Yeah. Sorry. But or go ahead.
But the references to Moby Dick didn't bother me, and I thought that I really liked what she said about him describing whales in the different chapters, and that was because he was like just trying to do something that was like, or sorry, she's talking about how it was sad when he was describing the whales in the different chapters, and somehow that was sadder than the rest of the book. And I thought that
It was like something like he just describes the whales in this boring fashion. It's because he must have like a terribly boring life or something like that.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know why my recall on that wasn't good, but it was something that I liked a lot.
Yeah, I like the essay thing too. What you're saying with like people like not liking nautical books or like Old Man of the Sea or Moby Dick, I think it could also just be like a pushback against anything that people push as like being the best books of all time or things that you have to read, because I've heard Moby Dick and the Old Man of the Sea both talked about in that way. But yeah, could just be that.
I could see, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I think that's all about I have to say about the movie. Really, did you have any other thoughts?
I think that is it. I will say that I felt like this movie gave Charlie a lot of like maintained a lot of dignity for Charlie as a character throughout the film, and I was really happy about that because I did go in a little bit nervous. I think I said this at the beginning about like Darren Aronofsky and how there's body horror in almost everything, at least that I've seen of his. And I didn't want the movie to be through that lens. And I never felt like they were looking at Charlie as anything other than a person. And so I really appreciated that touch with the movie.
Yeah, same here. And it to me, it's more. Have you seen The Wrestler?
No, I haven't, and that is one that I need to see because I know that one is also about a daughter and a father trying to kind of reconnect, right?
Yeah, they're very similar in that way. Like they're both like sort of humanistic looks at these characters, but like you can kind of look at like both characters as sort of opposites of each other. One's this very physical and athletic person, and the other one is the opposite. But I think they're kind of companion pieces. But I've heard some people criticize that they're too similar, but I didn't think I'd have a problem with it. I thought it was interesting how they sort of parallel each other. But yeah, those are both some of my favorite Darren Aronofsky movies. The Wrestler is probably my favorite of his, but yeah.
I'll have to watch that one. It's been on my watch list for a long time. And Oh, what's his other one that's like, you mentioned it earlier and now I can't think of it. That other one that has like a lot of religious themes.
Mother?
No, not Mother. I think it's
The
older.
Fountain?
Yes, The Fountain. That's another one.
Okay.
Well, The Mother is also on my watch list. But I think I'm more interested in seeing The Fountain and The Wrestler just based on what I've read.
Yeah. The Fountain's a weird one. It's very surreal and like he's just kind of going crazy with it, but like there's definitely a lot of interesting stuff there. My favorite ones are probably The Wrestler. I'm trying to think of my top four. The Wrestler, Requiem for a Dream, Mother, and The Whale are my top four Darren Aronofsky movies. Yeah. He's kind of got like and some people get rubbed the wrong way by this, but you could call his movies misery porn. There's like, pretty much with all of his movies, there's an element of like the characters like suffering in some extreme way. But yeah, but I find all of his movies interesting. I think he's a good filmmaker.
Yeah, I think so too. And I definitely can see misery porn from Requiem for a Dream, absolutely. But something about the ending of The Whale seemed way more hopeful to me than any of his other films that I had seen.
Yeah.
Even though I take it as Charlie passes away at the end or has a heart attack and kind of ascends.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something hopeful about he's not suffering anymore.
Yeah. There's like a hopeful element to it, and he also makes peace with his daughter, so that's good.
And with his
And
wife in a way, in that scene that you were talking about where they're kind of like just laying next to each other.
yeah, for sure. And I was actually expecting it to be worse. Like I was expecting it to be a lot harder to watch. I was almost sort of nervous in a way because I had heard things I had spoiled for myself. As I heard there was a scene where he's like gorging on pizza and like throwing up, and that does happen in the movie. But I was sort of imagining it like a lot worse. I thought he was just gonna be like throwing up on himself like over and over again. But it wasn't like too bad. It was like he's just kind of throwing up in a trash can and like eating pieces of pizza. Um, but I didn't. It wasn't like I was sort of dreading a little bit. I was excited for the movie, but I was just dreading that there was gonna be scenes that are like so hard to watch. But like there were scenes that were hard to watch, but it wasn't quite as bad as I was thinking. I guess that's where it doesn't really go into a body horror direction where it's like so hard to watch. It's more about the emotions and the writing, stuff like that.
Right. It's more emotionally hard to watch than it is like really any kind of physical thing happening. And I think that I agree. I think I kind of knew that there was going to be a scene where we see him binge eating.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also afraid that that was going to be portrayed in a very graphic way. But I think
Mm-hmm.
that whole scene was more emotionally charged than anything because in that moment he loses control of himself.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't like, oh wow, that's really gross or hard to look at.
Yeah, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, and I think it's better that it doesn't like sort of linger on that stuff. Although some people I think still think it does, but in my opinion, it doesn't. But yeah, um, so yeah, I like the movie a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
thank you for being here.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I'm glad we
we
got
should
to review
definitely review
this
something
one.
else soon. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's probably my top 10 of the year. It's one of the better movies I've seen this year.
It's definitely
But
my
yeah.
top 10. I was trying to think the other day what was my top 10 of the year. Um and I'm not sure yet, but I'm sure that by the first of next year I'll have a list.
Yeah, all I can say is, I mean, I could go read it. I have a list, but I can say my number one is The Northman.
Oh, really?
And then yeah, and then this one's in there too. But yeah, my number one's The Northman.
I'm sure that's probably going to end up on my list. I don't know if it's number one because I need to kind of think back, but this one, The Whale, is definitely high up on my list, or my top 10.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was definitely really good. But anyway, I think that's about it. So I'll see you later. And
Bye.
thanks,
Thanks for having
guys.
me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.